Ladies and gentlemen, if you would please find seats. We're going to start in about 1 minute. Co-chair says 2 minutes. Ladies and gentlemen, let's begin. Marcy Brandenburg, co-chair of Cleaner for All Now, and I welcome you to the very first in-person community-wide meeting of Cleaner for All Now. My name is Dennis O'Meara. I'm your co-chair. I want to do a couple of quick housekeeping notes. First of all, the restrooms are in the annex, which is right across this little area here. We want to hold all your questions and comments until the end of the presentation. So if you would, please do that. We have, as you may have seen, a number of different items there for you to consider signing, including a petition. And of course, if you're not a member of Clean Up for All Now and you would like to, there's a spot for you to do that as well to sign up so you can get all the newsletters and information that we disseminate periodically. We wanted to take a very brief moment to introduce ourselves. I'll start. My wife Carol and I were raised in Los Alamos, and after college and my stint in the Army, off to Vietnam, I joined the Centers for Disease Control and Prevention. We moved 7 times in 35 years, 6 times in the first 15, and we always wanted to return to New Mexico. And finally, in 2006, when we retired, we were able to come back. And here we ended up in Corrales, which we love. In 2011, I was reading in the Corrales Comment, our local newspaper, that Intel, New Mexico had raised its stacks to industry standard height. And the article said that people living further away from the plant would begin to experience what those close to it had been dealing with for years. I became concerned later that summer when my house began to fill up with fumes during the overnight hours, and my wife and I would wake up with our nasal passages, throats, and lungs burning. That's when I started to become involved in issues related to Intel and its toxic air emissions, and I have continued that effort to this very day.
Hi there. I've been around a little bit longer than Dennis as far as the group. I was a member of CRCAW, the Corrales Residents for Clean Air and Water, and I became a member after I found out that my really bizarre, strange illnesses at 40 years old were related to a lot of people in Corrales. And I worked in Rio Rancho and lived in Rio Rancho. And when I was informed by a Corrales resident that what I was describing was very similar, I decided to become involved. And that was over 22 years ago. And we've been through a lot in that period of time. Trying to work with the Environment Department, the Department of Health. We petitioned the Agency for Toxic Substances and Disease Registry, which is an offshoot from the CDC. And we basically got nowhere. So we decided, since we weren't really getting anywhere with politicians and representatives and Intel, that we needed to get to the people. We needed to get to you people, and we needed to let you know what we already knew, which is that it's a very dangerous place as it sits. If they do the improvements that we're requesting, actually demanding, requiring that they do, we'll all be safe, everybody will go home and we'll all be happy, and our kids will live long lives and we won't have problems. We're not asking for a lot. They can literally write the check today for what we're asking them to do, which is just, as if you guys read the letter to the editor, use your state-of-the-art abilities to also implement state-of-the-art emissions that protects the neighbors and the surrounding area. This is yours. I'm up. Okay. So Clean Air for All now. Oh, I guess I shouldn't take this with me. Sorry, I'm not used to standing behind a microphone. I have such a big mouth anyway. Clean Air for All now. Our mission statement is we're a nonprofit. We actually are under our fiscal sponsor is the Southwest Research and Information Center that's been around since 1971. They've done a lot of good for our area, our community, Albuquerque. And so they're our sponsors. So we are we have an umbrella, basically, sponsorship. So anytime you give us a donation, you get a tax deduction for it. And it goes through SRIC, and then they send out the check to whoever we need it to go to. For example, the pollution monitors that we've purchased. So our goal is basically to get Intel to do the right thing, as I said before, is to try to put up the right equipment. They know the equipment. There's an incredible book. I don't know, many of you know about it, but maybe many of you don't know about it. And it was written by a Corrales resident, Barbara Rockwell, who's actually in our audience today. This tells the history back into the early 90s, maybe even the 80s. Are we talking the 80s, Barbara? 80s. So this has been going on a long time. And back then, believe it or not, Intel didn't have any emissions equipment. They literally just dumped the chemicals raw into the air, which dropped, unfortunately, down onto a lot of people that lived right below the plant, therefore causing what we found to be a lot of pulmonary fibrosis cases and ALS cases. There's also concern about cancer research. So Dennis initiated a research study with Dr. Wiggins with the University of New Mexico, who's head of the UNM cancer tumor research, or tumor registry, right? And it's actually required by law that all doctors report cancers to this particular registry. So we've had that going on. We've had a preliminary report of the cancers around the area that was released in 2019. Dennis wasn't very happy with how they kind of diluted the numbers, so he asked them to go back. Rightfully so, they did. And we are still awaiting the results of that report. We've been demanding it, we've been requesting it, we keep being put off and told that it's in the future, a couple of months maybe. So that's where we're at, and that's why we're here tonight. We're here to show you some of the data that we've obtained through our air pollution monitors that we have around the area. And we're here to share with you, Dennis is here to share with you about the cancer research study, the preliminary report that was put out, and kind of get your attention and see if we can get the people to put the pressure on Intel and say, hey, I got to protect my animals and my children and my grandchildren, my wives and my dogs, and we just want you to do the right thing. And like I said, literally, they could write a check today. We're not asking them to do anything they can't do. And if they are leaders in the industry, then they need to prove that they're leaders in the industry. And they need to do the right thing. And they need to put in the right emissions abatement equipment. Dennis has studied so much and so long about the different types of abatement equipment that's available and the history and how it's gone. And he's the science man. So I'm more of a historian. I'm here to tell you stories. I'm here to tell you about people that we've lost to pulmonary fibrosis, Lou Gehrig's, cancers, people that we loved dearly that were original members of this group. And we want to honor them, and that's why we keep going, because we don't want that to happen to anybody else. I'd much rather be enjoying my golden years. I know Dennis and Carolyn would rather be enjoying their golden years, but we're here because we think it's important that Intel be held accountable and to account for what they put in our environment.
Thanks, Marcy. So we got together and established Clean Air for All Now shortly after Intel announced its most recent major investment in the New Mexico plant here in, actually, may I have that piece?
This one?
Yeah. In 2021. We started out then in December putting together this organization. We've been working on it ever since, and it's come to the point now where we think we have developed and organized and structured ourselves in such a way that we can begin to sort of have a coming out party, if you will. And that's what we're trying to do to start out with tonight. So one of the things that we've done over time is to try to develop partnerships and relationships with other like-minded organizations. And we've been very fortunate to have a relationship with a whole bunch of different organizations that have helped us tremendously with technical assistance and a variety of support, starting with the Anthropocene Alliance. We are members of that organization. It's a nationwide organization of local and regional organizations like ours, a variety of environmental focus from these different organizations, but a lot of them are dealing with air pollution. The Environmental Protection Network has helped us connect us to experts in various fields where we needed expertise and assistance. None of it has cost us a nickel. It's all been provided to us free of charge. The Center for Health, Environment, and Justice is where we got our initial grant, and that helped us get off the ground. We have another grant application pending with them, and we should know soon whether we get that or not. But these are small grants. The first one I think was $3,700, and now we're looking for another $3,200 if we get it. But we really need to have a whole lot more financial support if we're going to be successful at what we want to try to do. Common Ground Rising is a local organization that's helped us navigate around some of the environmental issues in the greater Albuquerque area. We have been working closely in some instances with people in the Ohio and Oregon communities. In Ohio, Intel has begun construction of a $20 billion factory there, and we're trying to help those people get organized. And in Oregon, where Intel has a major presence, they are already very well organized there. But we're able to reach out and interact with these groups, not only to help them, but to help us learn. And we're able to learn quite a bit from these organizations. The last one there is called CHIPS Communities United. And it is a recently developed organization at the national level. And what they're doing is representing communities that are hosting chip manufacturers. And as you may know, there's a piece of federal legislation called the Chips and Science Act, which was passed in 2022. And the purpose of it is to try to rehome, bring back to the United States much of the computer chip production capacity that left us over the last few decades, both for economic and security reasons. It makes a lot of sense. So here's an overview of all of the resources that are available through the Chips and Science Act. Over 100 entities have applied for funding, and the funding is about to be awarded. I've read in the next few weeks we should know a lot about who's getting what. Intel is right in the middle of it, and they'll get a big chunk. Among the companies that are building new or expanding besides Intel are Micron, Texas Instruments, Taiwan Semiconductor Manufacturing Company, which makes about 80% of the world's most sophisticated chips. Samsung and Global Foundry are among the really big ones, and they're all making investments in the 10, 20 to $30 billion range. It's quite large. So what that says to me is we're a part of this, a small part, but a part of this big picture, and this is all just sort of happening in the last couple or 3 years. So I want to talk about what we refer to as our 4 pillars. And these are the things that we stand on and that allow us to help us make our case. And I want to just run through them very briefly, first of all, and then we'll talk more about them in detail. So at first, is about the new medical science that's evolved in probably about the last 5 years, with regard to the dangers and the risks associated with even low, so-called safe levels of air pollution. And what the science is telling us is that these so-called safe levels are not safe. They do cause disease and they shorten lifespans. Next, is what Marcy was talking about, cancer studies. Back in the day, a lot of people, as Marcy mentioned, complained that they had cancers that they believed were caused by retail emissions. And when we look back, what we realize is that had never been looked at closely and studied. And we thought that needed to change. So in 2015, we went to the New Mexico Tumor Registry, which is the official state cancer registry, and asked the director to undertake a study. And he agreed to do it. And what we did was to have them look at cancers between 2005 and 2015. And so this was in 2015. Marcy and I approached him. December 2015. It took 4 years to get the report out. As Marcy mentioned, I certainly had issues with some of the methodologies and some of the content of the report. So we asked the director to complete the study, and he agreed to do it. That was in 2020. And he said that he would extend the study period all the way back to 2000 and all the way up through 2019, and that he would ensure that we could have a more timely turnaround. Here we are 4 years later, and we still don't have a study report. So we're pretty frustrated and unhappy about that. What I've been told is that the other study, the new study, should be available in the next couple of months. We're going to hold them to that, and if we don't get it, we're going to raise some you-know-what. So the third pillar is our air monitoring. And we've been doing some monitoring around the area of the plant since late 2021. We'll share some data that we've collected. We have 2 kinds of monitors. One is called flow, and it collects data on nitrogen dioxide, total volatile organic compounds, and 2 sizes of particulate matter, PM 2.5 and PM 10. And it transmits the data via Bluetooth to an iPhone, and then it can be downloaded and analyzed. We also have just recently purchased and deployed some purple air monitors. They focus exclusively on particulate matter. And what we hope is that we're going to be able to expand that, buy more monitors, and widen the area that we monitor. The fourth pillar regarding air emissions abatement technology, and these are the types of tools that are available, but what we're looking for Intel to do is employ hybrid equipment, which means multiples of these kinds of things that treat emissions multiple times before anything is vented to the air, not just once, like it's happening now. And that one at the bottom is called wet electrostatic precipitators. That takes particulates out of the air. We're going to talk more about particulates because they are very dangerous indeed. So, way back when, Corrales New for Clean Air and Water did a tremendous amount of work to try to deal with NMED and with Intel to get essentially environmental justice. And as Marcy said, that is documented in the book by Barbara Rocco, Boiling Frogs, Intel versus the Village. I would strongly recommend that you all try to get a copy of that if you haven't ever read it. It's fascinating and it's gut-wrenching.
There are actually, I'm going to point this out, people in Ireland at the Ireland Intel are already purchasing this book as well. People are everybody in Ohio, I literally had to fight people off to not contact Barb and get in touch with her because they wanted to talk to her about how, what they were looking at, which was a $20 billion expansion or plant.
So one of the major arguments back then was about permitting. And Intel, despite efforts from the community, was granted a minor source permit, which does not involve a whole lot of regulation or oversight and gives them wide latitude in terms of how much of whatever they can emit. So what we now know by looking at their permit is that they have limits for what are the so-called legacy pollutants, oxides of nitrogen, carbon monoxide, total volatile organic compounds, and sulfur dioxide and total particulates. Those limits go all the way up towards 100 tons each per year. And if they were to exceed 100 tons on any of those, they would have to get a major source permit. But the reality is, although their limits are in the 90s, around 95 tons each, they don't come anywhere close to that. Much lower than that. And so what that says is to me, is two things. They can raise their emissions anytime they want, without any oversight or regulation or informing the public, because they have that much latitude. And what that also says is that then they don't have a whole lot of motivation to keep their emissions low. And so, obviously, that's what we want to do, is to get them keep them to absolute minimums. So here's the cover page from the cancer study that was published in 2019. It goes, it comes out from something called the Cancer Concerns Work Group, which is made up of staff from the Tumor Center, the Tumor Registry, and the State Health Department, because the Tumor Registry is operated or contract with the State Health Department, that's stationed at UNM. And at the time this was requested, Marcy and I were operating under the auspices of Corrales Residents for Clean Air and Water. So that's why it says that. And I only put this up to show you the list of cancers that were studied, and there were a dozen of them. And what we found, what the study found, is that there were 2 cancers that occurred at statistically significantly higher rates than what would have been expected. And one of those was prostate cancer, and the other was myeloid and monocytic leukemia. There were 2 others, lymphocytic leukemia and non-Hodgkin's lymphoma, that occurred in greater numbers than would have been expected, but did not rise to the level of statistical significance. Nevertheless, all of that is of great concern to us, because when we started looking around the medical literature, what we found is that in South Korea, at the Samsung chip plant, many young workers began to come down with these kinds of blood and lymph cancers, and they fought for many years. They and the families of those who died fought for many years with the government and Samsung to try to get compensation. And eventually, in 2019, they did. And the government apologized, and the company paid. And that caught the attention of the director of the cancer center there. And so that's part of the reason why he agreed to do this again. So one thing we have to say about what we can say about causation is that, and we've always acknowledged this from the very beginning, is that this type of study, it's an epidemiologic study, does not allow for us to decide or determine what causes these cancers. No epidemiologic study can do that, can point to causation. Nevertheless, we want to see what the next study does and what the next study says, because the director has changed the methodology, and I won't go into detail about that except to say that it should give us a better and truer result. So we shall see. And as soon as that comes out, we will let everybody know about it. And right now what we plan to do is present that, or ask the director of the tumor registry to present it on Zoom, so everybody can tune in and see that. We'll see how that works out. So we talked about one of our pillars, that being the risks of exposure to so-called safe levels of air pollution. And we've done a fair amount of research on this to try to find articles that have talked about this. As I said, the science around this has recently evolved. There are a lot of articles available, and we've collected a bunch of them and put them on our website. The feature article on our website, the link is right on our homepage, is this one out of Harvard, and the title of it says volumes for me. It says long-term exposure to permissible concentrations of air pollution linked with increased mortality risks. And we do have a lot of articles posted on our website. Here are a few of them. I'm going to pause and talk about them individually, but they're there. And there are more than this. So I want to talk some now about what is referred to here as fine particulate matter. And this is these are particles that are 2.5 microns or less. And to put that into perspective, a human hair is anywhere from 50 to 70 microns wide. So these are particles that you can't see. There are a whole lot of different chemicals that can produce this particulate matter. Burning fossil fuels, auto exhaust, and a variety of other things. But a lot of it comes directly from stacks. And others form in the atmosphere. This example here, sulfur dioxide and nitrogen oxides. So the problem with PM 2.5, and this is what we're going to be focusing on a lot going forward, because it's dangerous for one thing, and because with our limited budget, we can't at the moment at least buy any more sophisticated monitoring equipment. But there's a lot to be said just about PM 2.5. You breathe it in, it doesn't come back out. It stays in the lungs, and it either lands on the lung tissue or it goes through the lungs into the bloodstream, where it's carried to other organs. And I think of these things, these particulates, as little drums. So they land wherever they land, and then they go poof. And they end up depositing whatever they're made of and whatever they're carrying in the tissue. And so over time, the cumulative impact of this is problematic for human health. And ultimately, the data, the studies that have been done in the past 5 years or so show this shortens lifespans, for sure. Here are some of the symptoms that one might get from breathing PM 2.5. But it gets a lot worse over time. Vital organs are impacted, and as I said, premature death is a lot of the outcome, unfortunately. Here's a quote that I took out of an article by a gentleman by the name of George Monbiot. He's an author, environmentalist. He wrote this article for The Guardian, which is a British publication. And it struck me, so we even have it on our website. The idea that some people may freely poison others is one of the most astonishing but least contested aspects of modern life. It's time we saw past the lies and the culture wars. It's time to stop accepting our daily poisoning on behalf of corporate profits. So now I want to turn to some of our monitoring results. And what talking about here is data that come from 3 different census sites in Corrales. And what we want to do, and what we have done, is compare what we found to what these health safety standards are from both the World Health Organization, or WHO, and the EPA. And talk about how these particulates disperse, and what we really believe is that we need to expand our effort in and around not only Corrales but also the Rancho. So here's where we have the 3 monitors that we're going to talk about. We named them Long Trial, Blue Sky, and Corrales. The blue arrows represent the prevailing wind patterns. The wind doesn't always blow that way, but frequently it does. And we're going to focus mostly on the Blue Sky monitor because that's the one that's closest to the stacks. And there at the top, you see how far away that one is from the stacks, and also from Highway 28, 528, which is important as we talk about momentarily. So,
Dennis, I'm sorry, can you speak into the microphone? It's a little hard to hear.
I'm sorry. Okay. So, here's on the right there is a picture of one of the flow monitors that we're talking about. 1 second. Here's a live flow. Here's a live flow. I got it. And this will give you not only specific data, but also a general idea of what your air quality is like. One pushes in that indented area there, where the little round circle is, like this, and then it'll tell you green, yellow, red, or purple. And so we can all breathe easy tonight because the flow tells us that the air is good again.
In here.
So first, we'll talk about what we found with regard to PM 2.5. So you can see World Health Organization guidelines, safety guidelines, say that average annual concentrations of 5 micrograms or less per cubic meter are safe, and a 24-hour average of 50 micrograms per cubic meter, no more than 3 or 4 days per year. Note that the EPA guidelines are higher, that they just recently reduced the annual average concentration for PM 2.5 to 9 micrograms from 12, and it's still way higher than the World Health Organization suggests. And the 35 for the 24-hour average, way more than the 15 that the World Health Organization suggests. And here's a graph of some of the data from the Blue Sky Monitor, and it shows that the EPA standard for annual exposure is exceeded, and so is the World Health Organization annual standard for reduced pollutant. And the 24-hour exposure, again, both are exceeded, and so we have coarse particulate matter, which is PM10 and lower. concentration shouldn't exceed 15 micrograms per cubic meter, and the 24-hour average exposure shouldn't exceed 45 for more than 3 days, 3 to 4 days. We see that for both sets of standards, what we've discovered with our monitoring is that both are exceeded frequently. Nitrogen dioxide, which forms and emits from a variety of sources. There is a variety of standards for this one, and there's an annual average, there's a 24-hour average, and a 1-hour standard. The 1-hour standard is 100 parts per billion. And EPA says annually 53 parts per billion. So what we found is that the 1-hour nitrogen dioxide standard of 100 parts per billion was exceeded more than 50 times during the period we monitored. The annual was not exceeded. Then volatile organic compounds, there's really no outdoor standard that we could identify because we don't know what's in the total volatile organic compound mix. And but the Occupational Safety and Health Administration has standards for indoor total VOC, so we looked at those, and what they say is that it should be okay with concentrations up to 400 parts per billion, and then if you go over 400 parts per billion, you start to have issues. So what we found here is that the red shaded area is the area above which standard kicks in 400 parts per billion. And you can see how often that area, that standard is, let me say, violated 72 times during the monitoring period. And here what we see is that these peaks that you see on the graph here the first red box on the upper left shows weekend. So across the top, you see, starting with the Thursday, Friday, Saturday, Sunday, and so forth, a full week's worth of data. There's no difference between what we saw for PM 2.5 levels during the week or on the weekends. So we think that that it's not likely that there's any other source but the one that we're most concerned about. And then you look at the late evening and early morning peaks in 2.5, and they are spaced pretty regularly. You can see this is the bottom graph is one full day, and look at 10 p.m., 11 p.m., midnight, and 1 a.m. So they're popping up at all different times and hours of the day and night. And what we saw is from the other two sites that were monitored, pretty much the same trends. And you can see at the bottom for volatile organic compounds, they exceedance of over 50 times a year. So there are a variety of potential sources for these pollutants. Ground-based emission sources like traffic and other kinds of potentially emitting facilities like dry cleaners and what have you. But of course also there's manufacturing and stacking emissions. And then finally, of course, we got wind, blowing dust, and forest fires. Those come and go. There's a map that shows the traffic patterns in and around the Intel plant. Intel is right where that blue line part covers, which is the 528. And these lines are hard to see, but can you all see a red line? Can you see red lines? Yes. They're that area inside the red lines is Highway 528.
Can you show that laser pointer?
Say again?
Laser.
Laser pointer pointed out?
Laser.
Yeah. So right there is one of the red lines, and that's the other. 528 right down the middle. This is Intel. A little further out is a yellow line, and still further is a green line. And so what we know from the EPA is that traffic generating emissions, PM 2.5 or other emissions generated by traffic only go so far and then dissipate. And the green line on here, if I could just see it, I can't quite see it, but it's but at that point it becomes almost normal background. So again, here's the red line, there's Intel. The green line is right in here. I'm sorry that it doesn't show up. But the point is that our sensors are well outside the green line. And what this says is that the pollution that we're detecting at those sites is not coming from traffic. So in conclusion on this part, PM 2.5 levels, PM 10 levels, NO2 levels, and VOC levels are all, we detected them all exceeding most of the safety and health standards that are established by the World Health Organization and the EPA. And we saw the same patterns at both the other two sensors. And so, again, the source for these things is not likely the traffic or any other source. So we need to, as I said, try to expand our monitoring process and add more sensors, and we're going to do that. We'll figure it out, but the more we can get out there and deploy, the better. So, coming down the home stretch, what do we want from Intel? I was wondering, how many of you saw our guest editorial in the Albuquerque Journal? It was a week ago Sunday. And it's also published just today in the Corrales Common. So I want to read you just one short paragraph from that guest editorial. Here's how abatement technology currently in use works at Intel. Volatile organic compound waste streams enter thermal oxidizers and are burned with natural gas at between 14 and 1500 degrees Fahrenheit. Whatever chemicals are not destroyed by this process are vented into the air, along with the products of natural gas combustion and some new chemicals formed by burning this material together. Likewise, Intel scrubbers treat acid gas waste streams, which include dangerous chemicals like hydrofluoric and hydrofluoric acids and chlorine, once. And by comparison, newer technologies treat waste multiple times before venting, significantly reducing exposure to harmful chemicals. So that's what we're trying to do. And one of the things with the wet electrostatic precipitators that I found interesting is that I asked people at Intel why they weren't putting those into place here, because in Oregon they did recently deploy those. And what they are is that the particulates go into the equipment and they're charged up. They get an electrical charge, and the inside of the equipment has the opposite electrical charge, and the particles are just attracted to the inside of the equipment, and then they can be collected and dealt with properly instead of sent into the air. And they said, no, we're not going to do that here. And so I said, well, it sounds to me like what we believe that the lives and health and safety of people in Oregon are more important than they are here. I didn't get any kind of response from them for that. But, so let me give it over to Marcy.
Okay, hi there. One thing I wanted to mention that was, I'll get to in half a second. EPN, Environmental Protection Network, not EPA. EPN is made up of former and retired EPA employees that said, we don't like what we're seeing, we don't like what you're doing, and we're going to start our own organization, and we're going to help groups like ours. So I really wanted that to be out there. As well as the CHIPS organization that Dennis mentioned, they are really kind of the watchdogs now of the microchip industry, which we never had before. So we do have some allies that we didn't have before. The best thing that you can do right now is join us, because, you know, we're not here to ask for money, and we don't know what your monetary situation is, but we need to buy pollution monitors so that we can locate them in the places that have been advised to be located, so that we can really hold somebody accountable. And so we really need people to donate whatever they can, even if it's like $20, it adds up. And then we're able to buy the monitors and place them in the areas that are advised by scientists for meteorological reasons, prevailing wind reasons, and all that. And that we can then have even more data, more proof that we know where this is coming from. It's not coming from the crematorium. It's not coming from Burger King. And it's not coming from the dry cleaners. So, what can you do? Join us. Just become a member. You know, believe it or not, I never thought that having, like Facebook friends was important and having so many followers. In order to get grants, actually they look at us and they go, well, there's only 30 members. And so you have to have at least 50 members in order to qualify for a grant. So we need as many members as possible so we can apply for as many grants as possible to purchase as many monitors as possible. Because that's really the only way we're going to do it, is if we do it ourselves. Of course, we're looking forward to the cancer research study, and like Dennis says, we don't know what we're going to do if they don't release it, but we will have to talk about that later. There is a QR code on one of those pages back there. If you guys are savvy and you know how to do the QR code, it takes you directly to our site where you can become a member. You can make your donations. There's also a sheet back there where you can sign up if you think your home might be a great place to have a monitor. And believe it or not, we're actually looking for places like even, across 313, Highway 313, Bernalillo High School. We want to get a really good idea and get these monitors really spread out so that the information that we get, we can compare and have the right data to present. And do your own research. There's been a lot of research. So read Barb's book. Oh my gosh. If you read about Silicon Valley and the 3 Superfund sites that Intel left there, Intel, in my opinion, is not to be trusted. They are the sheriff in town, the New Mexico Environment Department. I was born and raised here. New Mexico is a poor state. So we like people to come in, and we give them things, and we give them a penny for a gallon of water, and they use 4 million gallons a day, and I believe it's a year for their lease, for their land lease. That's crazy. In Oregon, when they had to they wanted to do this expansion, they made Intel pay $500,000 to evaluate the expansion. They said they really needed $1 million to do it, but they took the $500,000. New Mexico says, you want what? Okay. Well, you're so great. You give us 2,200 jobs. That's what they have right now, 2,200 jobs. Everybody thinks they employ so many people. They don't. In fact, a couple of years ago, they were paying $250,000 a quarter to the state of New Mexico because they didn't hire enough New Mexicans that quarter. Oftentimes, they bring in people from out of state, get them their residency quickly, and then hire them and call them a New Mexican. So truly, they are the only sheriff in town. We don't have any help. The only help we have are you people. If you want to put a monitor at your home, if you want to donate, if you want to be a member, it really boosts us up, and it helps us gain the credibility to Intel that we're not kidding. And we're tired of dying, and we're tired of being sick. And we're tired of watching our friends get sick. And it's just time to make, if you're going to be state-of-the-art, be state-of-the-art, and get state-of-the-art, and write the check today. And you know what? After over 22 years of being a pain in their side, I will walk away happily, but not until they do those things. I will breathe my last breath fighting the people that are not doing right by you. And the reason, I have to say again, the reason they're not doing right by us is because we don't demand it. In Oregon, they demanded it, and they're under a major source permit, and they have regulation. Here, we didn't demand it. We said, oh, you want that? Oh, you need this? What can we do to make your life better? And we didn't think about ourselves. And it's time that we start doing that. And we start expecting more from the people on the Hill who can pay for it and who can save us all and make our lives a lot happier.
So, one of the things that we wanted to talk about is how could you donate to our organization? Very quickly, if you go to our website, click on the donate button, and then follow the instructions. there's a, if you want to do it by credit card, you click in and you get a Network for Good form. You fill that out, and on the designation line of that form, you put Cleaner for All Now, and our funds go to our fiscal sponsor. You get a electronic receipt back. If you want to write a check, you make it out to Southwest Research and Information Center, which is our fiscal sponsor, and you put on the memo line of your check for Clean Air for All Now. It's that simple. You can send your check to the address which is on the website, or if you want to give it to us, we'll send it down. You'll get a receipt by the mail. All right, so what we want to do is start with questions, comments, and discussion. And I'm going to bring the mic out at the audience. And I'm going to just work from the front to the back, I guess. Yes.
Hi, my name is Bill Kemp, and I've lived here since 81. And I live towards the river, behind and I have IPF, which is idiopathic pulmonary fibrosis. And I went up to my pulmonologist, said the best place to get this analyzed in the country, and maybe the world, is the National Jewish Clinic in Denver. So I went up there for a week. It was the most amazing experience. 18 appointments in 1 week. It would have taken 2 or 3 years here to get the same thing done. And anyway, they're not sure what's causing it. They're still calling it idiopathic, which means we haven't a clue. And years ago, I was involved with the Clean Air, and we purchased a spectrometer, and we set that up. And I think the guy Fred March was involved with that. I guess he's deceased now. Yeah. And I was involved with going up to that machine and downloading the data onto a hard drive and then passing it off. You can analyze it. I'm not a chemist. I'm an electrical engineer. I'm no good at the chemistry part of it. And whatever happened to that machine?
It's called an FTIR, and don't ask me to tell you exactly what those letters stand for. Fourier, transform, something or other. Anyway, the community back then amazingly raised something like
50,000.
I think it was more like close to 100,000, and that equipment operated, as I understand it, for about a month in tandem with a similar piece of equipment from Intel and one from the New Mexico Environment Department. And then it continued on, the communities continued on for a while. Eventually, as far as I understand it, it broke down. It's very complex and complicated to operate, and it was extremely expensive all the way around. And so, what happened to it is that the Southwest Organizing Project was the fiscal sponsor for that money, and they reclaimed it and sent it up to Oregon. And I followed up on that, but they had not been able to get it to work. So that was an FDNR. So I mean, we're doing what we can with these low-cost monitors, and hopefully we'll be able to get some additional sophisticated monitors if we're successful in the fundraising.
Dennis, sorry.
How much are the low-cost monitors?
Well, the flow costs around $200 a piece. The purple airs are about $300. So it's manageable. Question.
Can I jump in just for a moment? Sorry, Dennis, isn't the FTI monitor one of the things you're calling on Intel to purchase?
Yes.
Well, they have them, or at least they have one. I know they have them, but they're super expensive, super complicated. But we'd like them to put monitors in place. They don't necessarily have to be FTIRs, but they could be something that's something that's sophisticated and does the job. This gentleman here is really anxious to.
Okay. My name is Dave Rockwell, and my understanding is the FTIR, as it says an infrared beam to a mirror about 200 meters away. You've entered all the chemicals that Intel uses, and it tells you in parts per billion what is floating in the air.
Mm-hmm.
This is a great piece of equipment that should be running right now, 24/7.
If we had the wherewithal to do it, we would.
I was wondering if, or why we didn't have one of the monitors upwind of Intel.
It does.
You mean in Rio Rancho?
Yeah.
Yeah, well, we were looking for a way to place those over there. And so far, we haven't found anyone that's located in the right place that where we could put one. But that's what we're looking to do is to do that.
Yeah, we're definitely looking for people in Rio Rancho. We have no loss of people in Corrales that are interested, but definitely Rio Rancho. And what we do is we're the owner of the monitors. We place them. You would certainly have access to see the readings and the writings. I have a monitor, a flow operator that I call once in a while. I'll come out and I'll smell some god-awful smell. And I call him up and I go, hey, what's happening? It's 4:02 and I'm at the Mercantile. And he'll text me back whenever he has time and he says, oh, it was really bad at that time. So, yeah, we need the monitors for Rio Rancho, for Northwest Albuquerque, for Bernalillo, for West Rio Rancho. We need them everywhere. And we need them so that we can show where these chemicals and these particulate matters are coming from. When we had that test, and I believe it was in 2002 to 2004, we had 3 FTIR monitors. One was our community monitor, one was the New Mexico Environment Department monitor, and one was an Intel monitor. Okay? All running at the same time. They all measured phosgene. Phosgene is
Mustard gas.
Mustard
The most
gas.
dangerous poisonous gas used in World War I.
They noted it in all 3 monitors at the same time and called it a false positive. Intel. Their monitor, as far as I know, was never used again. Neither was Department of Health. And of course, you've heard the history of our monitors. So yes, we demand that Intel have continuous monitoring, not only at the stacks and the cubs, at the scrubbers, but also in at least 2 different locations of their facility, in the south and the north. They should have 2 FTIR monitors. In Los Alamos, I believe there's 80 to 85 FTIR monitors. Another thing that people forget, we don't have any evacuation plan. If there's a problem like there was in Ohio, what do? You guys have 2 roads to get out of. And do you think you're going to make it out in time without any kind of warning system? You won't. So again, this has to, we've done what we can do. We're going to keep doing what we're doing. We're going to keep getting the data, the information to prove, but it's up to the people to call their Congress people, to call Intel, to say this is crap, and we demand that you guys do the right thing because you got the money and we want you to do it today because it's going to protect us all now and in perpetuity and our environment. Otherwise, we're a Superfund site, folks.
Let me make one other comment about phosgene, because what we learned is that Intel does not use phosgene. They said that they don't use it, and I believe them, because phosgene is a precursor chemical which is used to make other chemicals. The problem is that the emissions that they're putting out mix together, and when that happens, they do create some phosgene. I was at NMED for a meeting a few years ago, and I asked one of the officials, why is it that Intel has why is it that they list phosgene as one of the chemicals for which they have a limitation? And the answer that they gave me, which I now know is that they put it in there in case they wanted to use it. Well, that's not the way it is at all. It's because they make it in very small quantities, that's for sure, but if you're downwind and you take a whiff of one of those, some of that, it's not going to be pretty. And again, a lot of times what we're dealing with here is constant exposure of low levels that actually are cumulative, have a cumulative effect over time. Phosgene would just be one of those. Let me go on. Let me come to the further down here.
Hi, I'm Matt Glasser. I just bought a house in Corrales. I moved here from the east in September, and I bought right under Intel. Two questions. When you say emissions from the stacks, are you talking about those two tall white chimneys that we see? And then the second question is, you mentioned at the very start of the talk pulmonary fibrosis and ALS, but the study was other diseases. Is there concrete evidence linking ALS and pulmonary fibrosis?
Let's see. The first question was...
Are those the stacks? Are those things the
Those
stacks?
two white stacks are pieces of equipment that Intel is now using, they're brand new, to extract nitrogen from the air. And so they draw in air, they somehow divide up the elements that are in the air and grab onto the nitrogen. They use nitrogen a lot in the plant. For among other things, they use it to clean their equipment, they flush it out, and for other reasons as well. And then your other question is...
Those aren't emitting anything, those two stacks.
I have not gotten a straight answer on that, and I'm still trying to find out whether they're emitting anything or not. But the stacks themselves, you see the thermal oxidizers have scaffolding around them, and the scrubbers are not as tall, but yeah, they're scattered all around the plant.
The other question was ALS and pulmonary fibrosis.
Right, so ALS and pulmonary fibrosis. State Health Department carried out studies of both of those. And again, I don't mean to be a naysayer, but I wasn't impressed with the way the studies were done or what the results were, because the problem with those two diseases is that they are not reportable in New Mexico. And so the idea was to find all the cases and then look to see if what was occurring was greater than what we normally think would happen. And they weren't able to find all the cases, I don't think, because they're not reported and they're not reportable. So that was a problem. And so the conclusion was that no, these diseases did not occur at greater than expected levels. Let me come back further. Yes.
Sir, please. Please pardon me for interrupting.
All right.
My wife's talk over the House of Hospital. That is going to know. What I wanted to say was, I came here. My wife and I came here in 2013 for me to work at Intel. I was in the bag, but we stayed here for 3 years on Puerto Lopez. And so we left here in 2016. And in 2017, my wife was diagnosed with pulmonary fibrosis. So we've been battling that ever since. So, but I just wanted to say that. Please excuse me for interrupting. Thank you. But it was because of, you got to get battery charged. emergency room for something else. The emergency doctor on staff had no idea what it was. So they're playing catch up.
Never heard of pulmonary fibrosis. In ER.
Thank you.
Thank you. I'm Johanna Ash. I live on CLO as you. And my question has to do with Daniel's crematorium. How can you tell particulates from Intel and those that are from the crematorium?
Well, I went to the crematorium one day and talked with the person in charge there. And I asked him, how many cremations do you do? And when do you do them? So they do 1 to 2 per day on weekday early afternoons. So if they are generating a lot of particulates or other things, they're it's a very finite amount of time, and so if they are generating some of these, well, they're adding some to the whole mix, but it's really not. Compared to what we're talking about here, almost 100 tons of some of these materials that are coming out of Intel. There's just no comparison. Yes, they do generate some different kinds of emissions, but not to that degree. So.
I was just wondering how much does a monitor cost if you wanted to put it at your home?
The monitors that we use, the flow, for example, which unfortunately is no longer being produced, was $200. The purple air, which detects particulate matter, is about $300, the ones that we got. So. I've got that on the table there, Marcy. It's very small and not very intrusive. Yes. You just have to have Wi-Fi to make it work.
So here it is. It can either strap on a beam outside with, we call it zip ties, or you can drill it. And there are your sensors. So it's got an A sensor and a B sensor.
Can you hold that up again for everyone to see? Small.
And then I set them up, I do the Wi-Fi and I set them up. And then if you go public, then you can check it out. You can check out your own readings.
And what we hope is that we'll add more, make all of ours public, and there are a few that are owned privately that are installed publicly, so you can actually call up a map and see these little dots all over the map where they are, and you can look at what the air quality index is, and when you click on the air quality index of a particular monitor, you get a graph that shows the PM 2.5 levels. I think it's for a 3-week period. So we haven't got that network squared away yet, but that's where we're headed.
It's only a subset of the total pollutants. I mean, you've got gases.
Yeah, this is only one small part of the total pollutant load, if you will. Other questions? Yes.
Does anyone monitor our water?
We're into air and not water, but Intel does use a lot of water, and we send a lot of water down to the Albuquerque-Bernalillo County Water Authority. I don't know if that's exactly their title, but yes. And so Intel has to treat the water to a certain extent before it goes down there. And then depending upon circumstances, it may get treated again down there. There's an interesting little story. A while back, Intel agreed Water Authority agreed with Intel to build them a pipeline from a couple of wells in the far western part of the metro that have too much arsenic to be potable, but yet Intel could use it because what Intel does is purify the water in order to be able to use it for their production. So there was an article or an editorial in the journal about how wonderful that was, and that Intel was going to use this water that nobody else could use, and then it was going to be perfectly clean and clear and everything. And I just happened to ask one of the Intel staff, what are you going to do with the arsenic? And they said, oh, well, we're not keeping the arsenic, we're just putting it back in the water. So, I mean, they scanned the Albuquerque Journal editorial staff with that one. Okay, other questions? Yes?
My name is Michelle Bouvier Riley. I'm a previous resident of Corrales. I lived here for 10 years at what I call the mouth of the dragon. I lived right underneath Intel. Ended up on life support, sustained a traumatic brain injury. So if I wander a little, you'll have to forgive me. I'm not a chemist. I don't know much about science. I'm just a starving artist. But just so I'm clear on it, and I know this is a digression, just so I'm clear on it, and anybody that's new here is clear on it. So Intel, which is really as much a chemical factory as it is a microchip manufacturer, I think Marcy said that to me recently, and it's the best way to put it, that they have a permit through the state that is less stringent than perhaps Burger King might have. Am I understanding that right?
Yes, same.
Okay, I just want to make sure. And that shelter-in-place thing, I'm an ex-veteran, so I know what shelter-in-place means. It means, and people here were saying that there's really no emergency response order in place. Shelter-in-place really means we can do nothing for you. And I was just looking at Barbara's book. It means hide under a wet mattress. They said, a wet mattress? Are you smoking crack? Hiding under, this is, I'm glad I moved out, but for anybody that's here, and I'm so grateful for all of you people that have done so much for so long. Thank you. Amazing, amazing people. I cut bait. I ran away. But I'm so glad to see everybody here tonight, and I just want to make sure I understood that permit is as wimpy as it sounds. Okay.
It is wimpy, and
I just want to say one more thing before I lose the moment. Jeff Radford, who ran the Corrales comment for decades, we owe a debt of gratitude to. We think you're a hero. We think you're a wonderful man, and we could have done it without you. We really could not. Him and Barb and her husband and what the original group did. I mean, I can break down and cry for what you guys have done for us, and I'm so grateful.
I wasn't expecting that praise, but I just wanted to point out to you all and everybody else here that the New Mexico Air Quality Bureau does do testing on the stacks. But I asked that the most recent opportunity I had who did the testing. And it was an organization called ERM. I forgot exactly what those stand for. But my caution is that in the years that I reported on what Intel was doing, I found that ERM was, in my opinion, the least responsible. That is to say, they are of all the consultants that they hired over the years, they're the ones that always bent over backwards to be sure that they didn't say anything that Intel would object to. So just for you all, when you all look at the reports coming out and see reports coming from the consultant that Intel hires, just be careful if you see that it's from the ERM.
And thank you too to Carol Merrill, who's also run our local library for many decades and made it what it is today.
Yay,
So,
Carol.
yay, Carol. Yes, sir.
Dennis, just an idea here, and I don't know if it's appropriate or not, but one thing you might do is ask for a call to hands. And like the two questions that might be appropriate are, how many people have smelled a smell in people are present? How many people, even if they didn't answer that question, the first question, yes or no, how many people have experienced maybe precursor sort of health effects like skin, sinus, breathing, these early stage? And that's up to you to answer, because I don't know which question being answered. It sounds like, could you answer those questions? It's not really for me to answer. If you, those things that's
Smells and illnesses.
Smells and
Smells and
symptoms.
illnesses. Ask a show of hands, how many smells, how many people have had odors, noxious odors.
Yes. That you would attribute to Intel? Anytime.
Anytime.
Yeah, most of you have. Like my wife and I did when we woke up in the middle of the night.
And then how about illnesses
Symptoms.
after related to the exposure?
Or even not, even unknown.
Or even not.
Unknown but
unknown
suspected.
illnesses,
But
not
suspect-
knowing how or why.
symptoms.
Headaches, rashes,
Skin,
breathing difficulties, and so forth.
headaches. Those things would be early stage.
Can I just say we need to ask for more than we're really expecting? And that would be, like being on a committee that decides who's the consultant. That, having worked with government institutions all my life, you don't just ask for what you want, you ask for what they won't give you, and work down from there, and then go back up and have a top thing, now number 7 or something. So I think a lot more aggressive acts. Absolutely. I totally agree. Yeah, I did tonight, Linda Ware, and and when I looked a couple of months ago when I started smelling things like 3 o'clock in the morning, because I'm right below, we're like right down from the blue sky stack or the monitor, and I was astonished that I couldn't find anything online except for what had gone on like 8 or 9 years ago. So I was really happy to see the signs today, and I just pulled over and read them and tried to round up more people. But yeah, just like I know it's you have to be aggressive. That's all.
We do, and I appreciate that. You're absolutely right.
I suggest that Intel should pay the monitor at least 70%. Each one. 100% is best. 100% best. Because, we need just the backyard of the Intel. Very often get the odd smell. Yeah. And we moved to Corrales in 2018. And last year I was diagnosed with lung cancer, and I got the operation in November, and I'm still in recovery stage. Very bad, very bad. And a really bad smell. And sometimes my cat wants to run out during the night, and I open the door, let her out, then get this strange smell. Yeah, very bad.
Thank you very much. Did you call the state when you smelled that smell?
No.
That's what everybody needs to do. You pick that smell up, you call them and say, I'm smelling a strange smell in my yard. Because you got to remember, the chemicals that are the worst have no smell.
She's saying she doesn't know what she's saying. She doesn't know where to report.
The state EPA. State EPA. I would agree with you. You need a tracker.
I just
And every time you
I just wanted to say that I moved to Corrales in 1963, and there was no Intel there. I actually worked at Ampex Corporation, which is their office building now. And of course not then I didn't. But anyway, one of the questions my dad had, and I've recently wondered myself, is why did Intel take one of the most, AMRAP take one of the most beautiful, potentially beautiful places in on the West Mesa here, and put a factory there instead of high-priced housing. And now we know, because the southwest wind blows northeast. And so that's it.
Yeah? No. A vice president on a cruise ship to Alaska, when a person asked him, why did you pick New Mexico? Because they're too dumb to stop. Okay? And that's the truth, folks. That's the truth. The state and health department and Intel are both at fault with this. Believe me. Call every time you smell any smell.
Okay, I was going to note as well, too, that you made a point about some of the chemicals you cannot smell are even more dangerous.
That's right.
And I live on Tierra Encantada, towards the top of it, and that's a mile and a half or more away from the plant. Out in my backyard, sitting there on my patio, totally overcome by being unable to breathe because there was no air. My lungs hurt for days afterwards. This is ridiculous. Intel needs to be stopped.
They'll never admit it.
No, yeah.
And they've heard the story over and over again over the last
Yes, and when
10 years.
I called up Intel on a regular basis to report bad smells. Their answer is, we'll send someone out to actually check the. No, but yeah,
that's a lie.
What they say. They lie all the time. I'm tired of it.
Thank you, and that is true, and that's the major story that everybody gets. They call, it's vapors. In fact, there was a leaked memo that the Intel employees were told exactly what to say when people call. And they were told to say, oh, well, they're vapors. And they said, well, what if somebody has some knowledge and actually knows something? And they said, well, we'll just have to deal with that when it happens. So.
It's happened for 10.
I think we're getting close to wrapping up here. I wanted to say a couple of things as people depart. If you have any inkling that you want to be a member, please sign up at the back table. Sign a petition if you would, and follow us on our website and support us if you can, financially or otherwise. So, Marcy, any last words?
No, I've got one last comment. You guys, there's extra burritos out, so just grab them on your way out, because we are not taking them home.
The slides that you showed tonight are available on the website. Since they were difficult to see, can you post some of them?
Yes, we can. On our website.
I think one thing residents of Corrales need to do is contact their local officials. We had two councilors here tonight, Stuart Murray and Bill Bowman. Where were the rest? Where was the mayor? Where is our village administrator, who happens to be Ron Curry, who was the head of EPA? That's who we've got in our village government. He's at a town hall meeting. But this is who we have in our village government. At least we have two representatives from our council here, but yet the rest don't show up. And we have the former head of EPA as our village administrator.
I was just going to say that here tonight I learned of two more pulmonary fibrosis cases that I didn't know anything about. and I've been tracking the number of cases of pulmonary fibrosis and where they are in the village over the years. Haven't done anything with it for quite some time. But if you all know anybody else in Corrales specifically, but not just Corrales, who have been diagnosed with pulmonary fibrosis, please let me know and I'll just add it to what I've got here.
There are two journalists up here who would very much love to see those numbers, those cases of the pulmonary fibrosis. We're two journalists here.
Tuesday, I went to a funeral for a longtime resident and friend who died of brain cancer.
Does he live here?
Camino del Sol.
Brain cancers make up less than 5% of the cancer population, and we have a lot in Corrales, more than your average bear.
Just one quick question. I was wondering how much money actually Intel is saving by not following the law and by basically exposing us all?
Not enough when you compare it to the human mind, right? So maybe a couple of $100 million, maybe even if it was $1 billion, they could easily write a check out of their checking account.
20 or 15 years ago, that just to give you an idea.
So,
ladies and gents, thank you very much for coming tonight. I appreciate it. We're still here if you want to ask any other questions or have additional conversation. Thank you.
All in one day. I thought everyone here for hours, and they would be within their rights. And then we had the reports when they all came out. Mary Yule was demoted. State EPA was demoted to the basic the next day because she made the statement. I believe Intel is called. She would remember that. She worked harder than us. We took her off the third floor and put her in the basement. She's still down there. You got her locked in there. I don't think so. I think they. Well, I didn't get to understand and combine these chemicals. Fred Marsh said they're hundreds of times more toxic.
So I'm interested in putting a monitor in the Lake House. And, no, I didn't. Okay, I was, you know where Mockingbird Lane is? You know where Ellen is. Okay, take Ellen to the river. That's where you are. You know, we're gonna. Pardon? Yeah. Yeah. And the monitor, no. There's one I found. some of the similar things is $300. Whatever you know anything about it? Okay, that's for you if you want to look into it. It's made in Germany. I know that much about it. I'll buy it. My best interest to have one in my front yard and tie it into your system. Get a Wi-Fi and however you use it. That's what we need to do. Okay. Thank you.
Thanks for doing this. Great presentation. It's very, actually very interesting. Experience on other levels of the state.
Similar